Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the very first official episode of Retro Unscripted. My name is Peter, and I am so glad that you guys are along with me for the ride. I don't know how many episodes this series will be. I'm hoping it's going to be a long lasting series, but I certainly have a lot that I can cover with you. I have more than 35 years of personal experience and memories in video games, ranging from the early days of arcades and the Atari 2600 all the way up to the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox era. So that's a lot of ground to cover, and I hope that you guys will stick around for the ride as we move forward. Um, I want to thank a few people first before we get started. I want to thank a lot of the crew over at RetroWare TV, a lot of the video creators over there who have been instrumental in getting me to stop talking about my ideas and start acting on them. Norm, the gaming historian, Joe Walker, who does the backlog, um, Retrophile TV, bunch of people over there. I'm sure I'm missing a lot, but all of you guys, I really appreciate it. Without you, and without being involved in the retroware community, I would not be doing videos like this today. So thank you. I also want to thank a lot of my Twitter followers who also kind of convinced me that I need to stop talking and start doing. And if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of a video camera today, flying without a net and hoping that more than 2 people will watch this video. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. And Retro Unscripted is as much for you as it is for me. So what to expect from Retro Unscripted? Well, this basically, this is what I like to call Retro Central in here. This is my GxTV over behind me there, where I have a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo, a Sega Genesis, a Sega CD, a GameCube, a Nintendo 64, and a PS2 all hooked up to a VCR, which runs through this CRT that you see behind you. This is where I do a lot of my old school gaming in here. All of my HD stuff is in the other room, but that's not what this video series is about. So when I shoot these videos, I'm going to be shooting them in here, and it's going to be set up very similar to this, where I'll have a game running, especially if it's a game that I'm going to be talking about for review. You'll be able to see it running behind me, but not me playing it. It's not going to be game capture, and I'm not going to have any of the game sound pumping through here, just to kind of give you guys a visual sense of what it is that I'm talking about. I can't always guarantee that I'll have the shirt to go along with the game, as I do in the case of Jackass the Game here, but if I have it, I'll try and put it on just because it seems like the right thing to do. Also keep in mind that these videos are, well, I'm going to try and make them as professional as possible. They are shot without a script, without a safety net, and in one take. So if I flub my words, if I do a lot of ums and ahs, it's because there is no script. I'm just going off the top of my head. So whatever comes out of my mouth, comes out of my mouth, and hopefully you guys will understand what it is that I'm trying to get at, or that I'm able to express myself as clearly as I can. So I'm looking to do, over the course of this project, some video game reviews. That's not going to be today's video, by the way. I'll also look to talk about topics if you guys give me some that you want to know my opinions on, or specific memories on, like what was the first video game system that you ever bought with your own money, things like that. I can talk about for a few minutes and be more than happy to share that with you. But the other type of video that I'll make will be when it comes to adding games to my library, which I've been doing a lot this past week because GameStop is blowing out their PlayStation 2 games, and I have to take advantage of that as best I can. If you watched episode 0 of Retro Unscripted, which is where I kind of sort of unveiled that this project was going to be happening, I actually talked about a lot of the games that I added to my collection in that, but I went back to another GameStop store, this time in Enfield, Connecticut, which is about 15-20 minutes from my house here, and I came away with more games, and I'm going to show you, or more tell you what I got. And one thing I learned is that I can't zoom and show you guys what the disc looks like up close, because then the microphone doesn't pick up my voice. So I'm going to kind of show you the box art from, or show you the disc art from here, but you just have to go with me that I know what I'm talking about. Deal? Deal. All right. So first up is Atari Anthology, which you probably just saw. Atari Anthology has Atari 2600 games on there, and it also has some Atari coin ops on there. The coin ops, if you have Game Room for the Xbox 360, you've probably already seen. Games like Major Havoc, like Liberator, like Lunar Lander, Centipede, Millipede, Asteroids, all those games are represented here, although they have the actual arcade cabinet art. So some of the visuals look a little squished down unless you get rid of that. But still, it's a nice little collection to have. Now, when you're thinking about anthology compilations, the first one that probably comes to mind for the PlayStation 2 is the Activision Anthology, and that is by far better than the Atari Anthology is. There's no 80s music playing in the background here. There are no commercials to be seen. There are some weird gameplay modes that you can unlock, and there is some nice archive footage of like boxes and instruction manuals that got used from Atari age that you'd be able to look at on the disc. But it's still a nice companion. The two are nice companions because it gives you, even if you don't have an Atari 2600, it gives you a nice library of Atari 2600 games between the two to fall back on whenever the will strikes you to want to play those. So that's good stuff. The next game is Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter, this guy right here. I got this game because I heard the soundtrack is good. That's pretty much it, honestly. Aside from Mitsuda's soundtrack, when he did such a great job with Chrono Trigger and Xenogears, I really don't know why else I bought the game. I have enough RPGs to play, especially after getting Persona 4 and Digital Devil Saga this past week. I probably don't need another one right now, but it was cheap, and again, the Mitsuda soundtrack, I'm like, okay, I'll buy it. The next game is one of my bigger steals of the trip, is Def Jam Fight for New York right here. Def Jam Fight for New York, of course, the sequel or the next game in the Def Jam series after Vendetta. To me, it's not as easy to get into as Vendetta was. Vendetta, I was able to pick up the moves right away and do pretty well. Fight for New York kicked my ass from the word go, and I have to read up on the controls and kind of get used to it. But the game on price charting goes for about $23 loose. GameStop was originally selling it for $20 loose, and I got it for $4.50 after discount. So that's a nice little, not quite a jewel, but one of the more uncommon games in my collection, and one that has more value. Next up, those of you who watched episode 0, I talked a little bit about my Dynasty Warriors obsession and how they should probably have a support group, and I should probably be at the front of the line. But I did get another Dynasty Warriors game. This is Dynasty Warriors 5 Extreme Legends. So it's not really a full game. It's kind of a half a game. And it adds on to the Dynasty Warriors 5 experience. That reminds me, I need to get Extreme Legends for Dynasty Warriors 7. I got to file that back in my head. But yeah, it's another Dynasty Warriors game. Feel free to mock if you want. Just don't mock too loudly. Next up is Evil Dead Regeneration. I'm sorry, let me try that again. Evil Dead Regeneration with Bruce Campbell on the cover. Third-person action game in the Evil Dead universe. This is very similar to what I talked about with The Godfather in episode 0. It's a movie that I've never seen before, but I'm getting the game based on the movie because it's a video game. I also heard that Bruce Campbell, who did a fantastic job doing voice work in the Spider-Man games and the tutorial levels, also does a pretty good job in Regeneration 2, so why not? The next game was one I was a little worried about when I bought it because I looked at the condition of the disc and it was pretty wrecked. But after testing it, it turns out that the game actually runs very well. This is the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction right here from 2005. The interesting story about Ultimate Destruction is that my manager at Game Crazy back in 2005, where I worked for about 6 weeks, used to play this game when there weren't customers in the store. I used to watch, and I never really understood what the hook was. And it's probably because I'm not really a big sandbox game player or a big open world game player. However, after testing the game and seeing all the stuff that the Hulk can do and just breaking everything in sight, I can see what the allure is now. That's a game to play when you're angry. You don't like me when I'm angry, but you'll like me a little bit better when I'm angry and have broken some stuff in Hulk Ultimate Destruction. So that was a good pickup. The next thing I bought because it completes a mini collection of sorts. I have the three main Onimusha games, but up until yesterday I did not have Onimusha Blade Warriors, and that's now taken care of. For those who don't know what Blade Warriors is, imagine taking the Onimusha series with Summon Mosuke and all that really cool culture and setting. It's a third-person action game, and then you put that in a blender with Nintendo's Super Smash Bros. Games, and that's what you get. Yeah, I haven't played it very much. I played through a little bit of the tutorial, and I had no idea what the hell was going on, so I turned it off, and I'll table that game for another time. Next up is Pac-Man World 3. I liked Pac-Man World 2, which is in my library. I'm still looking for the original Pac-Man World on the first PlayStation. Uh, it's an action platform game with a mascot being Pac-Man. It still jars me a little bit to hear Pac-Man talking, something I haven't heard really since the cartoon, but that's okay. As long as the serial doesn't talk to me, I think I'm fine. The game looks great. The frame rate from what I saw was pretty solid. And you can never really get enough platform games, especially these days when platformers are kind of by the by, unless you're Nintendo. So that's kind of nice. Next up is Resident Evil Dead Aim. I don't have a light gun. So why did I buy the game? Because I actually like to play these games without the light gun. Call me crazy. I just don't mind moving the cursor around the screen and trying to go for headshots. I've played House of the Dead 3 and House of the Dead 4 on the PS3 without the PlayStation Move. And I don't do great, but they're still playable and fun experiences. Dead Aim is a little bit different than those, though, because it's not really on rails. You have to actually move the character and find things, and then you go into gun battle sequences in first person. So I have to get used to the controls. It's not bad, and it looks okay, but I definitely have some work to do to learn how the game plays and how to control it better. And getting that game without an instruction manual certainly hurt a little bit, so I'll have to do some reading. Next is a game I'm thrilled to have found because I almost bought it on Amazon for a lot more money. This is the Sega Genesis collection right here. I am a big fan of compilation discs, as you probably figured out, considering that I got the Atari Anthology as well. But the Sega Genesis collection has some really neat original Sega arcade games or coin-ops on it, like Zaxxon and TaxScan. And it also has some really well emulated Genesis games on there. A lot of them I don't have in my collection currently. Kid Chameleon, for example, which I've heard is hell on a cartridge, is on there. There's Gain Ground on there, which I had never played. Virtua Fighter 2 is on there. Take that for what it's worth. But they're all very well emulated. Some minor sound issues, but that's okay. And it allows me to play games, Genesis games that I don't have. So that's kind of nice. And the last game that I got, number 11, has nothing to do with the WWE Network being announced. This is just SmackDown Shut Your Mouth right here. I didn't have this. I have Just Bring It. I have Here Comes the Pain. I have SmackDown vs. Raw. SmackDown vs. Raw 06 and SmackDown vs. Raw 07, which is when the divergence started to happen between generations. But I didn't have that game. There was a gaping hole in my collection, so I had to fill it. And the big problem, and some of you collectors may have run into this yourselves, is that if you don't carry around a list of the games that you have, sometimes you just forget. I know I'm missing one, but I don't know which one it is. And you don't want to take the chance of buying a double when you don't really need it. So I finally went through my collection when the 75% sale was going on, and I said, all right, which game am I missing? So I know which game to look for. And it just so happened that Shut Your Mouth was the one that I was missing. So crisis averted. I have all the wrestling games now for whatever reason, and it's not that I needed to have them, it's that I wanted to have them. So those are the newest additions to the PlayStation 2 library, in addition to the 28 that I got, or the 27 that I got on Tuesday of this week in stores in Hadley, Mass. And in Holyoke, Mass. I think I've done pretty well with the 75% sale. The big problem now is that I've hit up so many of these stores and kind of picked and was able to choose what it was that I wanted, that there aren't really a lot of things that I'm looking for that are local. So now I have to start venturing a little bit further out, possibly Manchester, Connecticut, which is a little bit further drive, or possibly further out towards central Massachusetts to look around and see if there are things that I want to add. Those trips are probably going to take a little bit of time as I'm not working at the current time. I'm getting ready to go back to school on the 20th. But I certainly have things that I'm going to be shooting for. And when I make additions to my collection or my library, or if I get donations or anything like that, I'll be more than happy to make videos like this to show you what it is that I've added. I won't do it for 2 or 3 games unless they're significant, like if I stumble across a copy of Super Mario RPG or Chrono Trigger on cartridge or Earthbound or something like that. I'll do a video especially for those. But if I'm only going to get 2 or 3 PlayStation 2 games at a time, I'll wait until I have a nice little stack and then do a video just like this for what's new. So that's it. Episode number 1 of Retro Unscripted is in the books. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I don't know when the next episode is going to be. I'm going to try and do them weekly, maybe a little bit more often if you guys really want them. But in the meantime, if you guys have feedback, questions, comments, you can certainly leave them below if you want to deal with the YouTube comment system, or you can send me an email at retrounscripted@gmail.com, or you can visit the blog, and I'll have the blog address below the video here. There's also Twitter and Facebook pages as well if you want to get involved in the community that way. Thanks very much, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next Retro Unscripted.